Yes? Okay. So today we're going to go ahead and read what we did all the background information on, a month ago.
Yep.
All right. And it's starts on page 783. It's on the 4 stages of faith and the 5 stages of practice. It's one of the Nichiren Daishonen's 10 major writings. The orally transmitted teaching, it precedes the OTT by 4 years. So this was done in 1277. And this was done in 1272 or 1273 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, 4 years later. If this is, so 1270, if this is 1277, then 1281, right. So, but again, this is 4 years older than this. All right, because again, we got 6 stages of practice here, and here we're talking about 5 stages of practice, okay? But this is Tentai's definition. So let's get into all that, and then we'll go on into what I was talking about before we started recording. All right, so from page 783, on the 4 stages of faith and the 5 stages of practice, I have received the string of blue duck coins you sent. Scholars of Buddhism these days all agree on the following. Scholars of Buddhism these days all agree on the following. Whether in the Buddha's lifetime or after his passing, those who wish to practice the Lotus Sutra must devote themselves to the 3 types of learning. What are the 3 types of learning? You remember? Precepts, meditation, and wisdom. We do it just by chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. If they neglect any one of those, they cannot attain the Buddha way. In the past, I too described this opinion. So he says, in the past, which he's doing, he's creating a segue to, but I don't believe that anymore.
Right.
Okay? This is a new way to perceive the truth of the time.
Okay.
All right? We're in the latter day of the law. In the past, I too subscribed to this opinion. Setting aside here the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime as a whole, let us examine the question in the light of the Lotus Sutra. Here too, we may say that the teachings contained in preparation and the preparation and the revelation sections, we may set aside the teachings contained in the preparation and revelation sections. That brings us to the transmission section, which constitutes a clear mirror for the latter day of the law, and is most to be relied upon in determining this matter. The transmission section has 2 parts. The first is that of the theoretical teaching and consists of the 5 chapters beginning with the Teacher of the Law chapter. The second is that of the essential teaching and consists of the latter part of the distinctions and benefits chapter through the 11 chapters that comprise the remainder of the sutra. The 5 chapters from the theoretical teaching and the 11.5 chapters from the essential teaching combine to make 16.5 chapters, and in these it is clearly explained how one should practice the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. If this is not convincing enough, then further examining the matter in light of the Universal Worthy and Nirvana Sutras will surely leave no doubt. Now, where does the Universal Worthy and Nirvana Sutras kick in? Where would they fit if you're talking about these 16.5 chapters from the Lotus Sutra? What's the first sutra that comes after the Lotus Sutra? The Universal Worthy Sutra. We read it as part of the threefold Lotus Sutra, right? All right, and then the Nirvana Sutra obviously happened like all in the night before the Buddha died, kind of a thing. It's very long, but it's also a concise amount of time. It's just before his death. All right, so he's saying you can either find it clearly in these 16.5 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, or you can find further proof of that validity in the Universal Worthy chapter or the Nirvana Sutra, or the Universal Worthy Sutra or the Nirvana Sutra. Okay, he says within these chapters of transmission. So he's included the Universal Worthy and the Nirvana in that. This is all part of then did Tentai designate it as? This is the perfect teaching. The Lotus, which includes the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra and the Universal Worthy Sutra, the threefold Lotus Sutra, plus the Nirvana are the perfect teaching. Everybody's with me?
Yep.
Okay, so within these chapters of transmission, the 4 stages of faith and the 5 stages of practice expounded in the Distinctions and Benefits chapter refer to what is most important in the practice of the Lotus Sutra and are a standard for those living in the time of the Buddha and after his passing. Qingxi, who is Miolo, writes, to produce even a single moment of belief and understanding represents the beginning in the practice of the essential teaching. Of these various stages, the 4 stages of faith are intended for those living in the Buddha's lifetime, and the 5 stages of practice for those living after his passing. Among these, the first of the 4 stages of faith is that of producing even a single moment of belief and understanding, and the first of the 5 stages of practice is that of rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra. These 2 stages together are the treasure chest of the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, as they are the gate from which all Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 existences emerge. So now what did he say in that very loaded sentence? He says, these 2 stages together, okay, what are the 2 stages he's talking about? To produce even a single moment of belief and understanding, and also, among these, the first of the 4 stages of faith is that of producing even a single moment of belief and understanding, and the first of the 5 stages of practice is that of rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra. So those 2 stages is what he's talking about. These 2 stages together, okay, are the treasure chest of the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. What is that? The 100 worlds and 1,000 factors is what? The Buddhahood inherent in all living beings, and the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life is the 3,000 realms. It's the Buddhahood that's prevalent in all things, including the environment, including the person and the persons. They are the gate from which all the Buddhas and the 10 directions and 3 existences emerge. So it's saying basically understanding those 2 aspects of the truth and understanding, not necessarily those specific written quotations, okay? But that faith and that endeavor to practice towards understanding the truth are the gateway for all Buddhas, because all Buddhas go through that process or they don't get in. Get it? That's what we're doing right now. Whether you understand it or not, we are doing what I'm talking about, what he's describing. The two sage and worthy teachers, Chantai and Miolo, established these 2 initial stages of faith and practice and put forth 3 interpretations concerning them. One equates them with the stage of resemblance to enlightenment, the 10 stages of faith, and the stage of the iron wheel turning king. The second equates them with the first of the 5 stages of practice, which are identified with the stage of perception and action, at which one has not yet severed the illusions of thought and desire. And the third equates them with the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. All right? He continues, in reconciling these differences, because there's 3 interpretations. In reconciling these differences of interpretation, great concentration and insight, so the Makashikan Tentai states, the Buddha's intentions are difficult to determine. He explained things differently according to the differing capacities of his listeners. If only we understand this, then what need is there for troublesome disputes? In other words, as long as this has been the goal, there's no reason to argue about these 3 different things. Do you understand any of them? My opinion, the Daishonin says, my opinion is that of the 3 interpretations, the one that refers to hearing the name and the words of the truth, best accords best with the text of the Lotus Sutra. So he's saying, instead of Tentai and Myolo's three interpretations, I just go with the one that's hearing the name and the words of the truth. All right? Pardon me. Hearing the names of the words best accords best with the text of the Lotus Sutra. For in describing the first of the 5 stages of practice that applies to the time after the Buddha's passing, which anybody other than outside of the people that were present for the Buddha teaching and preaching, that would be after his passing, right? When they've encountered this law, when they've encountered this teaching, okay? That teaching is Honmatsu Kyoto in Honi Myosho, okay? But it's perceiving that with your own life. For in describing the first of the 5 stages of practice that apply to the time after the Buddha's passing, the sutra speaks of those who hear this sutra and do not speak and do not slander or speak ill of it, but feel joy in their hearts. Sort of a combination of those first number 1 and number 1. Okay. If one equates the stage described here with a level as advanced as the 5 stages of practice at the stage of resemblance to enlightenment, then the words "do not slander or speak ill of it" would hardly be appropriate. In particular, the passages in the lifespan chapter that speak of those who are out of their minds and those who are not out of their minds refer in both cases to the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. The Nirvana Sutra says whether they have faith or do not have faith, and if there are living beings who in the presence of the Buddhas, numerous as the sands of the Hiranyavati river, have conceived the desire for enlightenment, then when they are born in an evil age such as this, they will be able to accept and uphold a sutra like this and will never slander it. One should also consider these passages. So what's he getting at here? Have you grasped that yet? What he's going to be getting to is that everything is already contained in the first stage. Even though it looks like there's a ladder, like you've got to go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, in reality, it's once you entered stage 1, you're there. Now the rest of it is just realization. The realization is inside Honmatsu Kyoto. You no longer look at it as a teaching something outside of you. You begin to see it as your very life and as the existence of all things. That's called Buddhahood. Okay? All right, so continuing on page 784, first full paragraph on the second column. Again, in the 4-character phrase, a single moment of belief and understanding, the word belief applies to the first of the 4 stages of faith, and the word understanding to those that follow. And if this is so, then faith without understanding would apply to the first of the 4 stages of faith. The second stage of faith is described in the sutra as that at which one generally understands the import of the words of the sutra. And in volume 9 of the annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, which would be Myolo's commentary, explication of Tiantai's words and phrases, we read, the initial stage of faith is different from the others because in the initial stage there is as yet no understanding. Then we come to the following, responding with Joy chapter, where the initial stage of rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra is restated and clarified in terms of the 50 persons who in turn hear and rejoice in the Lotus Sutra, the merit that they gain thereby decreasing with each successive person. With regard to the stage achieved by this 50th person, there are 2 interpretations. The first interpretation holds that the 50th person falls within the stage of rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra. The other interpretation holds that the 50th person cannot yet be said to have entered the stage of rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra, but is still at the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. This is what one commentary means when it says, the truer the teaching, the lower the stage of those it can bring to enlightenment. Thus, for example, the perfect teaching can save people of lower capacity than can the doctrines of the 4 flavors and 3 teachings. Similarly, the Lotus Sutra can save people of lower capacity than can the perfect teaching expounded prior to the Lotus Sutra, and the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra can save more people than can the theoretical teaching people of any capacity at all. One should carefully ponder the 6-character phrase, the truer the teaching, the lower the stage. So he says, carefully ponder that. What does he mean by that? What's he talking about? What he's basically saying is that the closer that you get to the essence, in terms of the teachings, there's some very superficial initial stages, and then it becomes more complex in your understanding as you go forward, right? Mm-hmm. But he's saying at the same time, the higher the teaching, the more capable it is of saving other people, all right? And so what is the high teaching that we practice? We just chant Daimoku with faith, right? He's going to get into that. We didn't have to conquer the whole Lotus Sutra and get to chapter 16 and 17 in the essential section and understand the difference between the theoretical and the essentials. All we heard was Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So the reason that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo works now in the latter day of the law is because it's the essence of everything. Yeah. Okay, and since it's so the higher the teaching, the lower the capacity of the people that it can save. Mm-hmm. And Nam Myoho Renge Kyo can save everybody because it is the highest teaching. That's what he just qualified. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we go into Q&As on the first column of page 785. Everybody's with me, right? Yes. Okay, so question, in the latter day of the law, is it necessary for beginners in the practice of the Lotus Sutra to devote themselves to all 3 types of learning associated with perfect teaching? Now, would this question have had any circumstance in the former or the middle day? No, because who would have cared about it? They haven't even gotten to the latter day. He's preaching in the latter day. Yeah. That's when he's clarifying all of this, right? So the question is a setup question, like Leah asked, when in those many goshos where he does a question and answer, and the answer makes the question look like it was from an idiot or something. Is he setting that? Yes, okay. He's now qualifying to you the truth. All right, so in the latter day of the law, which is the 5th 500-year period and beyond, right? Is it necessary for beginners to practice is it necessary for beginners in the practice of the Lotus Sutra to devote themselves to the 3 types of learning, precepts, meditation, and wisdom associated with the perfect teaching? All right? Answer. This is a very important question, and is really the predication of this entire Gosho. All right? We don't do precepts or meditation, okay? Okay, we apply wisdom. And since we don't have wisdom, what do we substitute for wisdom? Faith. Faith. So all it takes is faith to actually enter that gate, enter that door. Okay? On your way to inside Honmatsukyo To, on your way to become enlightened in your present form. Everything is contained in that single moment. It's not something that is given to you a little bit at a time as you go forward. You're just revealing what already always was there. Okay? So, answer. This is a very important first answer on 785 first column. This is a very important question, and so I will be consulting the text of the sutra and answering you. In describing the first, second, and third of the 5 stages of practice, the Buddha restricts those at these stages from practicing precepts and meditation, and places all emphasis upon the single factor of wisdom. And because our wisdom is inadequate, he teaches us to substitute faith for wisdom, making this single word faith the foundation. So when we start practicing, or when we encourage others to practice, we should make it clear to them, as it was to me, all you gotta do is chant and have faith and not doubt. Faith means not doubt. Do not doubt. You must accept the teaching, or you can't understand the teaching. You can never acquire the teaching if you don't take in the teaching. So don't doubt the teaching. All right? And just chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And from there, you'll go forward. And from going forward, the rest of it will all become clear to you. Not because somebody else told you, but you will understand that this is the truth. Okay? So that's the point here. All right? We shouldn't overload new members with any kind of like, oh, you should read the, whatever that is, the New Human Revolution, or something other than just chant Daimoku for benefits, get benefits, and understand with your whole life that chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo has power. Okay? It'll take a while before you understand that that power is you. It's not coming from outside of you. It's actually the power of your own life, but you would never accept that on the front end because you already know you're not a Buddha. But in fact, you are already a Buddha. And this whole idea of attaining the state of inside Honmatsu Kyoto is nothing more than the sixth stage of practice. Okay? It's nothing more than that realization that not only is that the essence of your life, it's the essence of all lives, of everything, not just living things, just not lives of plants and things that are insentient, including things that are sentient, but actually the environment as well. Okay? And so he says, and because our wisdom is inadequate, he teaches us to substitute faith for wisdom, making the single word faith a foundation. Disbelief, and he tells, now this is why faith is important. There's got to be a reason why faith, just because I want you to believe what I'm telling you, am I telling you this for a self-serving purpose? No. He says, because in the absence of faith, disbelief will creep in, because you come into the realm of a temporary gathering of the five components, right? Is the original state, which already contains what? The three poisons. Because the three poisons are going to remanifest as dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. That's what's going to allow you to become the Buddha, is that you're born with the original three bodies. Okay? So he says here, disbelief is the cause for becoming an ekchantika. So you want to stay away from that. That's why you're told to believe, so that you don't disbelieve. You have to understand the importance of belief. The importance of belief is not to accept whatever they throw at you. Okay? Not to just accept whatever. It's to keep you from disbelieving that, because that's called slander. And you want to keep away from slander. But do you have the wisdom to perceive slander? No. Okay? So the only way to keep yourself from committing the slander of disbelief is to what? Is to have faith, is to believe. Okay? That's the medicine for curing slander and curing disbelief. Disbelief is the cause for becoming an ekchantika and for slander of the law, while faith is the cause for wisdom and corresponds to the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. All right? Tentai states, when persons have reached the stage of resemblance to enlightenment, the benefits they have accrued will not be forgotten when they are reborn in another existence. But for persons at the stage of hearing the names and the words of the truth, or the stage of perception and action, those benefits will be forgotten when they are reborn in succeeding existences, though there may be some among them who do not forget. Even in the case of persons who have forgotten those benefits, if they should encounter a good friend, then the roots of goodness that they planted in their previous existence will be revived. If they encounter an evil friend, they will lose their true minds. In other words, they will lose this connection to the original state of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? They'll be like slanderers of never disparaging. They'll have to go great periods of time before they encounter the three treasures again. Top of page 785, second column. This is probably what happened to the two eminent men of the middle days, those great teachers, Jikaku and Chisho, of the Tendai school. Now, those were both chief priests in Rakuji, right? Did you know who I'm talking about, right? Jikaku is the fourth patriarch, I believe, or Jikaku might be the third patriarch, and Shisho is the fourth, or is fourth and fifth, one or the other. Those are heads. The head of Enrakuji. Now, what's Enrakuji? Enrakuji is the ordination platform and temple that was created by Dengyo, okay, as the ordination platform for all of the Mahayana. It had never been created before, right? Okay, and then a couple hundred years after Dengyo died, True Word got introduced to Japan. It was not around when Dengyo was around, okay, and that's where everybody got confused, and it was introduced even to Mount Hei, and that's when that temple became distorted. Okay, they started practicing both Lotus and True Word, and then they took on Nimbutsu on top of that later on. Okay, completely confused everything. All right, and became slanderous. You could never go to Enrakuji and become enlightened from what's being taught there. All right, so he says, again, the great teachers Jikaku and Chisho suddenly had disbelief about the Lotus Sutra being the highest teaching. They lost their faith. That created the slander that took them away from the path that the Daishonin ultimately revealed. Okay? All right. They turned their backs upon the teachings of Tentai and Dengyo by mixing the trace teachings with the essential teaching, who had been good friends to them, had taught them enlightenment, and instead referred their allegiance to Shanmu Wei, Pukung, and others who were evil friends. And many of the scholars of the latter age have been deluded by Eshin's introduction to his Essentials of Rebirth in the Pure Land, and have as a result lost their true mind of faith in the Lotus Sutra, because now they're doing Nimbutsu, giving their allegiance instead to the provisional teachings associated with Amida. Everybody's understanding what I'm saying as I'm injecting those little notes, right? Okay. They are persons who have abandoned a great doctrine and instead chosen lesser doctrines. Okay. If we judge from examples in the past, they will probably suffer for countless kalpas in the three evil paths. It is persons such as these that Tentai meant when he said, if they encounter an evil friend, they will lose their true mind. These guys encountered Shanmu Wei, Pukung, and others who convinced them through their teachings that they were missing something by not doing True Word and Amida. Two teachings that did not exist during the time of Dengyo in Japan. So question in the middle of the second column, page 785. What proof can you offer to support your claim? Because the Daishonin is revealing history here. Volume 6 of Great Concentration and Insight states, persons who are saved by the teachings preached previous to the Lotus Sutra are those who have reached a high level of attainment. So this is Tentai, qualifying that your karma, your previous lifetimes, is what allowed you to become a priest and study and learn. You were on a continuing path that took lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes to complete, in terms of it taking you all the way to Buddhahood. Do you follow?
Yep.
Okay, that's the teaching of Tentai's teaching, right? That's what the Makashikan's just to get you close. All right? The reason is because these teachings are mere expedients. Okay, those teachers were to precede the teaching of the Lotus and then the fifth 500-year period in the teaching of Nichiren. Those saved by the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra belong to the low level of to a low level of attainment, because this teaching represents the truth. All right. The annotations on Great Concentration and Insight, the annotations on the Makashikan by Myolo, comments on this as follows. The passage concerning the teachings preached previous to the Lotus Sutra make clear the relative worth of the provisional and the true teachings, because it indicates that the truer the teaching, the lower the stage of those it can bring to enlightenment. page 786. Conversely, the more provisional the teaching, the higher must be the stage of those who embrace it in order to attain enlightenment. And volume 9 of On Words and Phrases, so that's again Myolo commenting, doing an explication of the passages of Words and Phrases by Tentai, says, this is from Myolo, in determining a person's stage of attainment, the more profound the object of meditation, the lower will be the level of the practitioner who can attain enlightenment thereby. I will say nothing more about followers of the other schools, but why would scholars of the Tendai school set aside this interpretation that the truer the teaching, the lower the stage, and instead accept the writings of the supervisor of priests in Eshin? The teachings of the Shan Wu Wei, Chan Kang Chu, and Pukun, and those of Jikaku and Shisho can wait until later. So he says, I'm not going to even get into those slanders. I'm trying to make a point to my disciples. This is a matter of utmost importance, he's saying to my disciples, Nichiren saying, Nichiren's to Nichiren's disciples. This is a matter of utmost importance. So he's talking to you and me right now. The most important in the entire land of Jampudvipa, thinking persons should listen to what I say. All right, so pay attention to what he's about to qualify here. After that, if they wish to reject me, then let them do so. In other words, he's saying, I'm going to lay on you the total truth. And if you can't handle it, bye. It's okay, I did my best. Question, page 786. For practitioners in the latter day of the law who have just aroused the aspiration for enlightenment, which is why people that would be chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo would be chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, because Nichiren has taught them in his new teaching, it's the latter day of the law. If you just say these words with faith, you can attain Buddhahood in your present form. You don't have to wait until a future lifetime. Okay? So that's the revolutionary twist that he's adding to all of this preceding already qualified doctrine. Question. For practitioners in the latter day of the law who have just aroused the aspiration for enlightenment, what types of practice are restricted? Answer. Such persons are restricted from practicing almsgiving, the keeping of the precepts, and others of the 5 paramitas, and are directed to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo exclusively. So he's saying, whereas in all of this other preceding teachings to what he's saying now in the 5th 500-year period, in his Gosho, in his letter, where he's transmitting his teaching, the 6 paramitas were the big deal. You had to accomplish the 6 paramitas to get to Buddhahood, right? He's saying, blow off every single one of them and just chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And he's saying right now, if you want to blow me off now for saying that, you can. I've tried. I've tried to reveal the truth to you. That's what he just said in the previous bit of before I just started reading this. Such persons are restricted from practicing almsgiving, so you can't give alms, the keeping of precepts and others of the 5 paramitas, and are directed to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo exclusively. This practice corresponds to the capacity of persons at the stages of producing even a single moment of belief and understanding and rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra. And what he's qualifying there is he's talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This practice corresponds to the capacity, because he just said they should do nothing but chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? So now he's talking about his teaching, not the teaching of Tentai or Dengyo or Myolo, all right? So he's going into his whole thing now. Do you understand? That's where we're at in this writing. This practice corresponds to the capacity of persons at the stages of producing even a single moment of belief and understanding and rejoicing on hearing the name and the words, or on hearing the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The Lotus Sutra is the latter day of the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It represents the true intention of the Lotus Sutra. The true intention of the Lotus Sutra is to get to the 16th chapter and to have the original teacher in the 5th 500-year period make their advent and bring forth the true teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. You follow? Yeah. That's the purpose of the Lotus Sutra, was to get us to where we are now. Because this time period, this latter day of the law, lasts for 10,000 years, not for 1,000 years. It lasts forever. I have never heard such an assertion. Well, you couldn't have, because it's the Daishonen's teaching. Okay? And only his closest disciples has he been this profound in revealing the essence of it to them. Okay? I have never before heard such an assertion, the question says. It astonishes my mind and makes me wonder if my ears have not deceived me. So it's sort of like, most of you are going to hear what I'm saying and they're going to go, what? Okay? See, where are you getting this stuff from, Nichiren? Okay, he says, please clearly cite some passage. So he's challenging himself, Leah. You know, in his question, he's setting up his answer. Definitely, he's saying, please clearly cite some passages of scriptural proof and kindly explain. So now what is he qualified there? He's talking about, I just quoted from the Lotus Sutra and the Nirvana Sutra, the perfect teaching. I just quoted from Myolo, Tentai, and all those dudes, not Chisho and Chikaku, you know, from Mount Hei, who have been at war and now everything's fallen apart. They're even doing Nimbutsu over there now. You know, they don't even know what they're doing. He's saying, I have never before heard such an assertion. It astonishes my mind. It makes me wonder if my ears have not deceived me. Please clearly cite some passages or scriptural proof and kindly explain. And the Daishonin is going to say, why, when I just quoted from the Lotus Sutra, would you want want some doctrine, what somebody said about the Lotus Sutra instead of what the Lotus Sutra says? Okay, so this is why faith is so important. Okay, all right. So he says the answer. The sutra says such persons need not, for my sake, erect towers and temples or build monks' quarters or make the kinds of offerings to the community of monks. This passage from the sutra makes it quite clear that practitioners who have just aroused the aspiration for enlightenment are restricted from almsgiving, the keeping of the precepts, and the other of the 5 paramitas. Question: the passage you have just quoted restricts us only from erecting temples or towers or providing for the community of monks. It says nothing about the keeping of the various precepts and other practices. Answer, second column, page 786. The passage mentions only the first of the 5 paramitas, that of almsgiving, and skips mention of the other 4. Question: how do we know this? Answer: because a subsequent passage in describing the 4th stage of practice goes on to say, how much more is this true of those who are able to embrace this sutra and at the same time dispense alms, keep the precepts, as you know, in other words, as that whole passage goes. The sutra passages clearly indicate that persons at the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd stages of practice are restricted from practicing almsgiving, the keeping of the precepts, and the others of the 5 paramitas. Only when they reach the 4th stage of practice are they permitted to observe them. And because such practices are permitted only at this stage, only at this latter stage, may we know that for persons in the initial stages, they are restricted. Question: the sutra passages you have just quoted seem to support your argument, but can you offer any passages from the treatises or commentaries? Answer: what commentaries would you like me to cite? Are you referring to the treatises by the 4 ranks of sages of India, or to the works written by the Buddhist teachers of China and Japan? In either case, it amounts to rejecting the root and searching among the branches, seeking the shadow apart from the form, or forgetting the source and prizing only the stream. You would ignore a sutra passage that is perfectly clear, and instead seek an answer in treatises and commentaries. But if there should be some later commentary that contradicts the original sutra passage, should you then cast aside the sutra and follow the commentary? Nevertheless, I will comply with your wishes and cite some passages. In volume 9 of the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra, it is stated there is a danger that a beginner will be led astray by subordinate concerns, and that this will interfere with the primary practice. The beginner should directly give all his attention to embracing this sutra. That is the highest type of offering. If one sets aside formal practices but maintains the principle, then the benefits of the many will be many and far-reaching. In this passage of commentary, subordinate concerns refers to the 5 paramitas. If the beginner tries to practice the 5 paramitas at the same time that he embraces the Lotus Sutra, that may work to obstruct his primary practice of chanting Daimoku, which is faith. Such a person will be like a small ship that is loaded with wealth and treasure and sets out to cross the sea. But the ship and the treasure will sink because it's overloaded. It's too much. The base is not there. And the word should directly give all his attention to embrace this sutra. Do not refer to the sutra as a whole. It's not talking about the 28th chapter Lotus Sutra. Kids, it's the 5th 500-year period. It's my Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And the words should directly give all his attention to embracing this sutra. Do not refer to the sutra as a whole. They mean that one should embrace the Daimoku, the title of the sutra exclusively, and not mix it with other passages. You should just chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as I'm instructing you to. Even recitation of the entire sutra is not permitted. Whoa! Why is recitation of the entire Lotus Sutra not permitted as part of the way that you attain Buddhahood in the 5th 500-year period and beyond? That's what it just said, isn't it? Even recitation of the entire sutra, and he's talking about the Lotus Sutra, we're all clear on that, right? Is not permitted. Why? In the first 3 stages of practice. In the latter day of the law. Why? Why would he say that? Because in the latter day of the law, the Lotus Sutra is a provisional teaching. Okay? Right? The Daimoku has now been brought forth. It's in the open. Inside Honmatsu Kukyo To is now available, and the truth, the final truth, is available for mankind to endeavor to find out. This is the truth that lasts forever. Okay, this is the truth that is the beginning. Okay, all right. So he says, even recitation of the entire sutra is not permitted. How much less are the 5 paramitas? To set aside formal practices but maintain the principle. Maintain the principle. That's what the chanting the Daimoku is. Means that one should set aside the keeping of the precepts and the other formal practices, the stuff that's just ceremonial, the 4 practices of the 5 paramitas, and embrace the principle of the Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, exclusively. All right? When the commentary says that the benefits will be many and far-reaching, it implies that if the beginner should attempt to carry out various other practices and the Daimoku at the same time, then all benefits will be completely lost, because you're not going to really practice in the correct. You're not going to put the effort toward Daimoku forth that's going to bring you benefit and answer your questions and establish your faith. All right? Your faith is to believe, okay? But the belief comes from understanding, because you see actual proof. All right? All right. So it's not faith forever and ever and ever and ever. It's faith to see the actual proof occur, and then that sustains and maintains the faith on an ongoing basis as you continue through the first 3. And then when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of 4, 5, and 6, which is becoming a Buddha in your present form, all right, that's when you got to know more than just faith. You've got to have a chance to have some insight into the depth of the teaching and what's being actually presented to you. Okay? It's not the Gohonzon outside of you anymore. It's the Gohonzon that's inside of you. It's your own life. Okay? It's not the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of Nichiren on the hillside the night before he did his first sermon at Seichoji. It's the original state of Kuan. It's the original state. It's the original essence of everything. Okay? So, words and phrases, second column, 787 continues. Question: if what you say is true, then upholding the Lotus Sutra is the foremost among all the precepts. Okay, and again, then upholding the Lotus Sutra, what does that actually say that we know, understand from the OTT as practitioners in the latter day of the law? What did that sentence actually just say? Then upholding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the foremost among all the precepts. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We chant Daimoku to the Gohonzon. We do Gongyo. We pay homage to the Lotus Sutra in Gongyo. But the primary thing that we do is what? We chant Daimoku. Yeah. Do we just chant Daimoku? No, we chant Daimoku with faith. Right?
Right.
Okay. And we share the practice with others.
Yes.
But that occurs after stage 3. Okay? That's resemblance to a Buddha. We're in stage 4 there, you know? Resemblance to a Buddha is when you're propagating the law, all right? Or learning to propagate the law. Okay, so why? Okay, so if what you say is true, then upholding the sutra is the foremost among all the precepts. Yes, chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Why then, in describing the 4th stage of practice, does the Lotus Sutra speak about one who can keep the precepts? Answer: this is done in order to make clear by contrast what is needed at the initial stages. One should not criticize persons at the initial stages for failing to observe requirements that pertain only to the later stages. Okay? I'm telling you, this is all heavy-duty stuff here. The scholars of today, ignoring the passage of... And how many people do you know have gone Titan from trying to do everything on the front end? Instead of just chanting Daimoku, they were given instruction to do more than just chant Daimoku. This is the Gosho that qualifies what you're supposed to do when you shakabuku someone. You lead them, you open the door, you entice them to enter. They're the ones that have to enter. And they're not going to enter unless they have faith. And they're not going to have faith unless they've seen benefit. And a lot of people get choked off from chanting long enough without doubt to get benefit. They're immediately shown enough that they begin to have doubt. You tell them too much. You tell them more than they need to know. They start to try and qualify it on their own. That's what leads to confusion. That's what leads to this disbelief. And disbelief is the seed of slander. Okay? So they're not going to get benefit that way. So the way you just chant. Just chant. Just chant. Chant with faith. Chant to see something happen. Chant to ask it to prove itself. Okay? Don't be afraid to tell people to chant, to ask to see the Gohonzon and Daimoku prove it. So you should never worry about people not getting benefit. All right? That should never... If you have that worry, you may infuse that in somehow. Don't contaminate the scene. Your pure faith is what's supposed to be winning the day, okay, and being the example. The scholars of today, ignoring this passage of commentary, would place ignorant people of the latter day in the law in the same category as the 2 sages Nanye and Tentai. Okay? A most egregious error. Myelo, and okay, in other words, what is he saying there? He's saying, if you don't do it this way, then you're basically saying that people in the initial stages of faith have the same qualifications as Nanye and Tentai, the 2 original teachers of the Tentai school. Okay, Nanye was Tentai's teacher, right? Okay. Tentai got the Makashikan from him. Chang'an wrote it down, right? So he's saying, you're saying that they should be equal to those kinds of Buddhas. That's not fair. That's not even reasonable. That's not the way to go about it. You don't have to anymore now. It's the latter day of the law. We got Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? So would place ignorant people of the latter age in the same category as the two sages Nanya and Tintai, a most grievous error. Miolo further clarifies the matter as follows. Question: if that is so, then is there no need to construct actual towers to house the Buddha's relics? And is there no need to formally keep the precepts? And further, is there no need to provide alms for monks who carry out the formal practices of the 6 paramitas? Don't forget, that's what you're doing with the 6 paramitas. The great teacher Dingo declared, I have forthwith cast aside the 250 precepts. Okay, so Dingo is the first one to say, I throw out the 250 precepts of the Hinayana. Okay, and the great teacher Dingo, who was not the only, and the great teacher Dingo was not the only one to do so. Nyoho and Dochu, who were disciples of Ganjin, as well as the priests of the 7 major temples of Nara, all of them in like manner cast them aside. Moreover, the great teacher Dingo left this warning for future ages. If in the future age of the law there should be persons who keep the precepts, that would be something rare and strange, like a tiger in the marketplace. Who could possibly believe it? So going on to page 788. So he's saying, who would understand doing that? Why as time goes on, you wouldn't be doing that anymore, right? Mm-hmm. It's not an obscure, nobody knows anything else about it. It's been propagated. Mm-hmm. Question, top of page 788. Why do you not advocate the meditation on the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, but instead simply encourage the chanting of the Daimoku? Okay, why don't you talk about, why don't you encourage meditating on the Lotus Sutra and instead just chanting Daimoku? That was that question. All right, answer. The 2 characters that comprise the name Japan contain within them all the people and animals and wealth of the 66 provinces of the country without a single omission. Is that cool or not? So in other words, the 2 characters of Japan contain everything that's in Japan. The Daimoku contains everything that's in the Lotus Sutra. That's what he's saying in that sentence. Okay? Without a single omission. And the 2 characters that make up the name India, do they not likewise contain within them all the 70 countries of India? Miolo says, when one, for the sake of brevity, mentions only the Daimoku or title, the entire sutra is by implication included therein. Miolo said that all the way back in the middle day of the law. He also says, when for the sake of brevity we speak of the 10 worlds or the 10 factors, the 3,000 realms are perfectly encompassed therein. This is the simultaneity of everything that we did as a preface to this Gosho. Okay, remember I was talking about all those different things that are all involving simultaneity? That's what Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is, the simultaneity of cause and effect. It's the oneness of cause and effect. Okay, it's the mutual possession of the past and the present in a single moment. Right? Okay, when the Bodhisattva Manjushri and the Venerable Ananda came to compile all the words spoken by the Buddha at the 3 assemblies during the 8 years in which the Lotus Sutra was preached. They wrote down the title Myoho Renge-kyo, and to show their understanding that the entire sutra is contained within these 5 characters, they proceeded with the words, this is what I heard. So it's Myoho Renge-kyo, this is what I heard, right? All right. Question. If a person simply chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with no understanding of its meaning, are the benefits of understanding thereby included? Answer. When a baby drinks milk, it has no understanding of its taste, and yet its body is naturally nourished. And whoever took the wonderful medicines of Javaka, knowing of what they were, whoever took the wonderful medicines of Jivaka, knowing of what they were compounded. In other words, you get these medicines from your doctor, you don't know what he put into them, but you take them and they make you well. So you don't have to understand the whole Lotus Sutra. You have to embrace the title, and the effect is the same. Water has no intent, and yet it can put out fire. Fire consumes things, and yet how can we say that it does so consciously? This is the explanation of both Nagarjuna and Tintai, and I am restating it here. This is Honin Myosho, what he just said, the essence of essence, the original state. Why do you say that all the teachings are contained within the Daimoku, which is what I just said, Honin Myosho? Okay? Answer, Chang'an writes, top of the second column, page 78, hence Tintai's explanation of the title in the preface conveys the profound meaning of the sutra. The profound meaning indicates the heart of the text, and the heart of the text encompasses the whole of the theoretical and essential teachings. And Myolo writes, on the basis of the heart of the text of the Lotus Sutra, one can evaluate all the various teachings of the Buddha. All we need is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is what that paragraph just explained. We don't need to worry about missing something because we're not reading the full 28 chapters. Do you follow? If we're chanting the Daimoku with faith, all of the 28 chapters without a single omission are contained. Though muddy water has no mind, it can catch the moon's reflection and so naturally becomes clear. When plants and trees receive the rainfall, they can hardly be aware of what they are doing, and yet do they not proceed to put forth blossoms? The 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo do not represent the sutra text. Nor are they its meaning. Okay, let me say this correctly. The 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo do not represent the sutra text, nor are they its meaning. They are nothing other than the intent of the entire sutra. The entire sutra was leading up to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, not the other way around. Okay? So, even though the beginners in Buddhist practice may not understand their significance, by practicing these 5 characters, they will naturally conform to the sutra's intent of attaining Buddhahood in their present form. Question, when your disciples, this would be a question to Nichiren, when your disciples without understanding simply recite with their mouths the words Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, what level of attainment do they reach? The Daishonin declares in his answer, not only do they go beyond the highest level of the 4 flavors and 3 teachings, as well as that attained by practitioners of the perfect teaching set forth in the sutras that precede the Lotus Sutra. So, provisional Mahayana and everything behind it. They exceed all of that, but they also surpass by 100, 1,000, 10,000, million times the founders of the true word and various other schools of Buddhism, such as Shanyue, Chi Yin, Tzu Yin, Chi Tsang, Tao Xuan, Bodhidharma, and Shantao. Therefore, I entreat the people of this country, do not look down upon my disciples. If you inquire into their past, you will find that they are great bodhisattvas who have given alms to Buddhas over a period of 800,000 million kalpas. That's why they have the fortune to be born as my disciples in the latter day of the law. And who have carried out practices under Buddhas as numerous as the sands of the Hinayana and Ganges rivers. That's why they don't need to screw around with provisional teachings or the 5 or 6 paramitas. And if we speak of the future, they will be endowed with the benefit of the 50th person, surpassing that of one who gave alms to immeasurable living beings for a period of 80 years. They are like an infant emperor wrapped in swaddling clothes, or a great dragon who has just been born. Do not despise them. Do not look on them with contempt. And I'll stop there on page 789, where Myolo writes, Those who vex or trouble the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra will have their heads split into 7 pieces, but those who give alms to them will enjoy good fortune surpassing the 10 honorable titles. 2 things that are written on the Gosha. We'll start there again on 789 when we get together again. Thank you.
Thank you.